Game of the Year Part 2 was this past weekend, and the sequel actually was pretty good. If you had a chance to watch or listen to the Marion at Indiana Wesleyan game, it was a pretty good game. And sometimes the sequel's not as good. I mean, we most times the sequel is not as good as something you may have enjoyed the original on. There are exceptions. Rocky 2 was pretty good. I'm dating myself with this one. I understand that right off the bat. I know that I'm dating myself with some of those. I want to say, yeah, Wrath of Khan. That goes back a little ways, but definitely a Star Trek fan, and everyone knows Wrath of Khan was much better than the original, 17-hour movie. But the sequel here may have outdone Game of the Year Part 1 just the week before. We'll talk about that. That one is coming up at the very end of the broadcast. And by the way, if you know what that means, then yeah, somebody from that game or somebody's from that game is going to be in our top 5. Good evening. We are live here from Studio B in the world headquarters of Emerald Quest. I'm Joey McWilliams. Glad that you are along with us tonight. Jake is watching, and I know he's watching from East Wichita. Let me know from where you are watching tonight. We appreciate you being on the broadcast with us. We're going to talk about the top 5 performances in NAIA football for Week 10. But before we get to the top 5, we are going to be talking about things that went on beyond the 5. A lot of other good performances out there and other games out there before we get to our top 5 for this week. And it is the penultimate week of the regular season. We do have some playoff adjustments. We talked about possibilities last week. We are going to have a playoff possibility show, which will be on Tuesday, because I want to defer to our friends over in Florida with NAIF Ball, who do their regular show on Monday nights. So NAIF Ball doing the show on Monday night. We're going to defer to those guys and not do our playoff possibility show on Monday. We're going to do it on Tuesday, and I hope that you get a chance to watch those guys too. Corey does a great job with that. Hi, and Han Solo, by the way, thank you very much for watching again. Han Solo from Oregon watching tonight, but I know what team he is cheering, and that is Evangeline. Guess what? Well, you had a lot to cheer for this weekend as well. Let's get started. And if Corey were watching tonight, if Casey's watching tonight, we're going to go ahead and get started with Ottawa 27-24. No graphics, by the way, until we get to the top 5. So Ottawa 27, Kansas Wesleyan 24. In overtime, the Braves come away with a 3-point victory. It was the 5th straight win for Ottawa. First overtime win since 2017. First victory over Kansas Wesleyan since 2014. And it was Winton Ruth again. 20 carries, had only 96 yards, but he was big when he needed to be big. And that was in that final session, the extra session, if you will. Winton Ruth, 1 rushing touchdown of the day. It came in overtime, as Kansas Wesleyan had 3 points on the board. Ottawa needed to get that many or more. How about Winton Ruth for 20 yards, Winton Ruth for 1 yard, Winton Ruth for 4 yards and a touchdown. Now has 1,078 rushing yards on the season. That is 10th most for a single season in Ottawa. Congratulations to the Braves. 6-4 right now. They will represent the KCAC Bissell division in the playoffs, win or lose. Next weekend, we'll see how that all plays out. Pikeville 68, St. Andrews nothing. Congratulations to the Bears. Close out the regular season with a win. 68 points, the largest margin of victory in school history. 68 points, ties for the second most in school history in points on the board. They end the season on a 4-game winning streak. They're 7-3. We don't have them as a playoff team, but again, we'll talk about that a little bit more on Tuesday. So we'll see how it all pans out. It could happen, but no, not for sure on that. Anyway, Reinhardt 56, Kentucky Christian nothing. Reinhardt, by the way, yeah, we have the Eagles going to the playoffs, taking the Appalachian Conference title and the automatic bid there. Jordavian Colbert, 3 rushing touchdowns on the day, 56-point win for Reinhardt. Siena Heights 77 and Madonna 14. Ethan Lopresto, once again, 15 carries, 36 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns, had 2 receptions for 13 yards and a receiving touchdown as well. He had 4 TDs on the day. Great day for Lopresto, and that is a school record, his 4 TDs. David Medvedik, 10 point-afters successful, 10 for 10 on the day. And you're saying, but Joey, they had 77 points. Didn't they get an 11th point after? Actually, they did. Jackson Gregory came in for the 11th point after. I don't know the reasoning for that. Let's just get another person in the game at this point in time. 77 points, a school record for Siena Heights. Congratulations to the Saints. St. Thomas 33, Southeastern 21. The Fire got up 14-0. St. Thomas came back, scored the next 27 points, and it was 27-14 at the end of three quarters. The Bobcats getting the win. Keely Watson, big day for St. Thomas. 25 for 35 passing, 360 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Kalitri Zhao, 10 catches, 130 yards, 13 yards per catch there, 1 receiving touchdown. By the way, St. Thomas rocking and rolling, as some of these teams are. St. Thomas volleyball team completed their Sun Conference schedule undefeated as well. They're 14-0 in Sun Conference play, looking to make a trip into the NAIA volleyball playoff. Florida Memorial, a team we have right now as a playoff possibility. 37-24 over Thomas. Florida Memorial 6-3, 5-1 in conference play. They're averaging 280.4 rushing yards per game as a team. That's second in the NAI. Jake, I'll give you 3 guesses who that is behind in the nation at the top of the country in rushing yards per game. First 2 guesses don't count. Sedquan Smith, 26 for 33 passing, 282 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Walter Wilbon, who's had a fantastic season this year, 14 carries for 108 yards rushing and 1 touchdown. For Florida Memorial, it was the fifth Sun Conference win. And here's where it gets big. Excuse me. I want to make sure, hey, we're 1 cough drop tonight. We're getting better by the day. I promise you we are. 5th Sun Conference win. They host Kaiser next week. That's one of the big games of the weekend next week in the season finale. Lawrence Tech 41, Taylor 37. Lawrence Tech, I know, we're talking about Lawrence Tech, rallied with 24 points, 24 straight points to close this one out to lead 41-31 late. Taylor got a touchdown at the end, but Lawrence Tech with a win. Not bad. St. Francis of Indiana, 34-24 over Concordia. The Cardinals season, it's just gotten a little bit rougher as it's gone on. For St. Francis, Cam Peterson, 23 carries, 83 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns on the day. St. Xavier, 38, Olivet Nazarene, 21. Stuart Ross and Cameron Crouch. You think this is going to be a big day for them, and they both perform very, very well. But for St. Xavier, more of Amari Venerable, 24 carries, 156 yards rushing, 2 rushing touchdowns. Justin Pringle, 8 receptions, 133 yards receiving, 2 receiving touchdowns. We're propping them up a little bit. We knew what Stuart Ross and Cameron Crouch were going to bring. They did their job. Big day for them. Graceland, more Cade Ross as he continues to come out. Season winding down for the Yellow Jackets. Again, not the year that they wanted. Cade Ross is back in, 27 for 37 passing, 278 yards, 3 passing touchdowns. Had a pick on the day, though. He was also 8 for 19 rushing with 2 rushing touchdowns. So Cade Ross with 5 touchdowns that he was responsible for on the day. Reggie Wilson, 7 carries for 67 yards and 2 more touchdowns on the ground. I want to say thanks again to everybody for watching us here on this Sunday night. We're going to a 3 live stream schedule for the week ahead, and I just appreciate you watching. Let us know from where you're watching tonight on the live stream on this Sunday night. I believe that Late Kick with Josh Pate is already over. He's my Division I watch and go to all the time. If you like D1 broadcast, he's the one to do that. I think he's finally done now. So thanks for tuning in if you were watching that. Georgetown 31, Cumberland 17. Darius Neal again, 25 carries, 201 yards rushing. Yeah, two centuries on that one. I don't want to leave that out. He's past the bicentennial mark there. 2 rushing touchdowns, 3 catches for 19 yards as well. The Tigers continue to roll. It's been about the defense. It will continue to be about the defense. Tigers have a great defense, but Darius Neal doing his job well. How about Mid-America Nazarene? Still playing meaningful games in November. We talked about it from the start of the season. We're going to continue to talk about it in a big game next week for the Pioneers. 28-21 over Missouri Valley, and lots of players putting up some big numbers in this one. Adrian Parsons, of course, we talk about him week in and week out. 28 for 44 passing, 306 yards, 3 touchdowns, had a pick as well, 8 for 18 rushing. How about Tion on Missouri Valley? 29 for 49 passing, 387 passing yards, had 3 interceptions, though. That was the key there for Mid-America Nazarene. And for the Pioneers, Caleb Bryant, 11 carries for 1 yard. I know. It's 1 net yard. Had 1 rushing touchdown, though, and 1 catch for 10 yards receiving. That also for a touchdown. Jeremiah Bryant. If you like the name Bryant, then you were listening to this broadcast. You heard that a lot. Jeremiah Bryant for the Vikings, 8 carries for 36 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns, 4 catches for 13 yards there as well. Caleb Bryant, though, with a 5-yard game-winning touchdown run with 2:51 left. Mid-American Nazarene will take on Benedictine next week. Not necessarily a winner-take-all. I don't believe it is. Benedictine has a couple of losses, but as we talk about, again, our playoff possibility show will be on Tuesday night. That'll be at 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 8 o'clock Central Standard Time. Yes, we're back to Standard Time now. Did you enjoy the extra hour of sleep? Benedictine 34, Missouri Baptist 16. I think Benedictine, the losses have been tough, but they're legit. So Benedictine could be winner take all in the Heart South. I'm not sure yet. We'll talk about it a little bit more on Tuesday. Yes, Dave, 3 episodes this week. And we're starting our week. We're gonna count Monday as the start of the week. So week 11 we'll have 3 episodes. I encourage you, please tune in. So and we're also getting into, it's the time of the year when some of my broadcasts will come back around. So I actually have a live broadcast. I do a lot of work for the Great American Conference in Division II. We'll be calling Women's Soccer Championship on Sunday. I think it's early afternoon. I'll be back for this broadcast then, I promise, on Sunday night, our last top 5 of the year. Jacob Gathright, 5 catches for 179 yards for Benedictine, 2 receiving touchdowns. Gathwright's been the man all year that Jackson Dooley has been able to find. Not the only one. Dooley, another big day. 17 for 29 passing, 369 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns, had no picks. The Ravens are rolling into week 11, and it's going to be a big matchup with the Pioneers there in the Heart South. Concordia 55, Doane 26. Now, we picked Concordia to win in this one, even though Doane was one for coming in. Looked like it might have corrected some things. Doane had every opportunity in this game, and I'm going to tell you why. Concordia ran 78 offensive plays. That's quite a few. You're thinking, okay, well, that's not that bad. Doane ran 25 more than that. 103 offensive plays in this game, put only 26 points on the board. The Concordia defense was busy all day long. Doane with Cruz Kerwan back at quarterback, 39 for 70 passing. I know. 39 for 70 passing, 412 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, was picked off twice. He had 5 carries for 7 yards as well. Kerwan was responsible or had his number called in 75 plays. That's more than a game for some of the teams this past Saturday. Amazing. Jeremiah Payne, 16 catches, 213 yards receiving. It's a big day. Didn't have any receiving touchdowns. How about DJ McGarvey? We've talked about him since the outset of the season. 26 for 45 passing, 364 passing yards. I know it's nearly 50 short of what Kerwan had. Still a fantastic day. 4 passing touchdowns, no picks, had 3 carries for 7 yards and a rushing touchdown as well. So McGarvey had a big day, and he was responsible for 5 touchdowns. So you think, wow, what's his top 5 going to look like? Some pretty impressive numbers on the day, and then one that we just had to give. Hey, Fred, thanks for watching. Appreciate you tuning in. We're going to be talking about the team you like here in just a moment. Well, a little bit later on. Let's see. We're at the 13-minute mark. Give us about 20 minutes or so. We'll get there. Bethel 27, Bethany 3. Bethel was 5-4 coming in. That was not what I saw from the Threshers. And if you look at this game and what the Threshers did here, it's not what you probably expected to see from this team. DJ Sears not playing in this one, and I don't have word on that one. I don't know if he was injured, just went a different direction. DJ Sears has been running the show fantastically for the Threshers this year. It was Ben Schmidt at quarterback, and it was not a running game. It was a passing game. Schmidt with 18 for 33 passing, 298 passing yards. That's been unheard of for the Threshers this season. 3 passing touchdowns, 1 interception, 8 carries for 7 yards. Schmidt with a big day. Trevor Madison, 7 receptions for 139 yards on the day. That also a very big day, 2 receiving touchdowns. So there we go. Let's move on along. We're rolling. We are getting to the top 5, and we'll be there momentarily. This score How about this one from the state of Iowa? And if you picked Dort, good for you. I did not. And I have defended the defenders this year, but I did not have this in this one. And Dort not only wins this game, goes up early. A blocked punt returned by Adam Morning for a touchdown. And Dort goes up 21-0, 3:33 left in the second quarter. And then Morningside decided, hey, listen, this is got to get things turned around here. 24 straight points following that one. Lennox Brown and Zach Chevalier, I wanted to get the pronunciation on that one right, at quarterback, took the lead after 24 straight points with 3:56. But Dort, with less than 4 minutes remaining, went 75 yards, 12 plays. Colson Cruz caps it off a 3-yard touchdown run with 30 seconds left. And the defenders, 28. The Mustangs, 24. That was big. Now, I don't know, Dave, did you watch this one? Were you there for that one? This was a big, big game. And not only does Morningside now drop to 8-2 on the year, first time in a long time. And I know there was a lot of talk on the internet about when they went the last time Morningside had dropped 2 games. We'll talk about this on Tuesday. Bottom line is this. One of the stats that I had run a little bit earlier in the year, as the Morningside regular season winning streak was continuing to grow. It had gotten up to 75 consecutive games. It's been a long time since they've had a losing streak. And again, we'll talk about that on Tuesday. But I think the big stat here is that it had been 15 consecutive years in which Morningside has had a winning percentage of .833 or better. Right now it's at 80%. A win on Saturday against Briar Cliff would put it at 81. So you're looking at that. But unless Morningside runs the table in the playoffs, it's going to be a team that loses at least 3 games this season. And so it's going to be tough to keep that .833 winning percentage. I know Coach Ryan isn't concerned about that at all. That's the least of his concerns. But, you know, as we're looking at this as fans of the game, and some of you all actual fans of Morningside directly, it could be a season in which they don't have an .833 winning percentage. It's still gonna top 800, I'm sure. Here or there, doesn't matter. Morningside, though, still in the playoff talks. I don't think this takes Morningside out of the playoff talks at all. However, I do think it puts Dort squarely in the playoff talks. And you are looking at the GPAC as a possible 3-bid league. Now, it's an expanded playoffs with 20 teams and not 16 this year. 13 automatic bids, 7 at-large bids. There are some conferences or divisions that are hands down 1-bid leagues, period. But there are a few that are definite 2-bid leagues, and I think we could be looking at a couple that could be 3-bid leagues. I'll just tell you this, to tease Tuesday night a little bit more, we have it down to 27 teams that have a legitimate shot at making the playoffs. Now, obviously, there could be someone that comes out of nowhere, and I'm not on the committee by any stretch of the imagination. They didn't ask my opinion. I'm just letting you know that up front. But we will talk about that. We'll talk about the area ranking committee, and they did use the word ranking right there. But the area ranking committee, there were some numbers that were put out at the end of October that were from the NAIA in the 4 different regions. And it's similar, if you follow Division II and Division III in the NCAA, to what you might look at with some of the regional rankings. And so this has a similar feel, and the NAIA selection committee actually looks at the end of the year at these area rankings for the different parts of the country, different conferences that are in these, and it does go a long way toward helping to pick the at-large teams and then helping to seed 1 through 20. So that's my tease for Tuesday night show. So we'll talk about that on Tuesday night. Back to Beyond the Five here. It was well, let's see. I had Brendan Piper for Dort, 18 carries, 111 yards rushing. Colton Cruz, we said 3 for 12 passing, no passing touchdowns, but he picked up his touchdowns on the ground, 2 rushing touchdowns, 13 carries for 57 yards. Lennox Brown, how about this? 8 for 12 passing, 69 yards, 1 passing touchdown, 7 for 73 rushing, 1 rushing touchdown. Drew Sellen, 10 receptions, 70 yards receiving, 1 receiving touchdown. Zach Norton, 7 catches, 91 yards receiving. But in the end, it was the drive by Dort when they needed it. The defenders get a 75-yard, 12-play touchdown drive, 28-24. So there we go. Jake, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Avila 41, Sterling 10. Avila does get the win on, we picked that last week. Eli Williams, 15 for 32 passing, 161 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 1 pick. 10 carries for 117 yards, 1 rushing touchdown as well for Eli Williams. And Jaquise Watkins, 23 carries, 183 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. Hastings moves to 5-5 now. 37-32 with a win over Midland. Carson Kudlacek, 25 for 43 passing, 333 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, no picks. Back to the Heart South again for just a moment. Baker still in the mix. 58-7, the win over Central Methodist. 534 yards of total offense. Truman Julesgaard, we've talked about him not from the very outset of the season, but 2 or 3 weeks in. 23 for 28 passing, 238 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, no picks, 3 carries for 29 yards, and a rushing touchdown as well. Northwestern 49, Dakota Wesleyan 28. 23rd consecutive win now overall for Northwestern, the defending national champions. Jamin Aaron, 33 carries, 189 yards rushing, another touchdown. Keel Nelson from Austin Lee, 3 touchdowns in that connection for Dakota Wesleyan. And Keel Neeson, 8 catches for 147 yards receiving. Those 3 receiving touchdowns were his. For Northwestern, we could talk about a number of players. Let's just go with Connor McQuillan this time. 17 carries, 127 rushing yards, 1 touchdown. Clark 31, Peru State 17. I talked about the 103 offensive plays that were run a little bit earlier by Doan. How about this for Clark? Clark ran less than half of that. Only 50 offensive plays, still put 31 points on the board in Peru State. And I think apparently the Bobcats just used everything up in the game against Grandview. I thought they'd turn it around, get it back to 5-5. Bobcats fall. For Clark, Craig Elmore, 23 carries, 75 yards rushing, 3 rushing touchdowns, 4 catches for 28 yards, had a receiving touchdown as well. Evangel, this one's for you, Han Solo. Evangel 17, Southwestern 14. And it was a fourth quarter drive, last minute drive, as Southwestern had a 14-10 lead. The Valor went 75 yards in 1 minute. It was capped off by an R.J. Wakely to Brock Lyle, 38-yard game-winning touchdown with 40 seconds left. Brock Lyle, 5 catches for 130 yards and that game-winning touchdown reception. Dylan Hester, by the way, another big day for him. 8 catches, 118 yards receiving for Southwestern. Jarius Burnett, a 4-yard touchdown run. That's what gave Southwestern that lead late, but it would not stand. Evangel now 10-0 on the year, 11 straight games for the Valor, victories for the Valor as well. And they are going to, I think it's outright for sure now. Well, Friends could get a share of the title. Evangel is going to represent the Kessinger division of the KCAC. So you're looking at an Evangel spot there. So go ahead and chalk that one in. The Valor 17-14 winners over Southwestern. One more game before trying to complete the perfect regular season. And Isaac cheering for the Valor as well. So props to the Valor. Speaking of Friends, I mentioned them in that a little bit earlier. Evangel defeated Friends in, I almost said Springfield. It was in Nixa. 66-17, Friends over McPherson in Riverfront Stadium there in Wichita. the goalposts look pretty good there in that minor league baseball stadium. Friends, 66 points, tied for the most points in the modern era that Friends is saying is since 2004. So that's a modern era for the program. 3,995 rushing yards. We were very sure from the outset that this was going to be a team in Friends that topped the 4,000-yard rushing mark for the season, and they need to do it 5 yards. Cavante Baker can take care of that. Han Solo, the Evangel game was an emotional roller coaster for sure. Absolutely. I mean, it was it definitely was, and it was a game I picked against the Valor in the Friends contest, and I told Mrs. Midwest Sportsnet, so I wasn't sure about that. We went back and forth, and I was wrong. Evangel, by the way, showing up on defense again. There is the key. Holding Southwestern to just 14 points. A big game, big win there. So props to Evangel, and again, representing the Kessinger division. So let's go back to Friends for a moment. We talked about this. Cavante Baker can pick up that 4,000 yards in just, one play. I was going to say 2 or 3 plays. He was had 23 carries for 102 yards rushing, 2 rushing touchdowns in the win against McPherson. 0 for 3 passing. They don't need to pass. Did not throw a pass at all the week before. Threw 3 passes and still come away with 66 points. How about Traylon Gross? 6 carries, 117 yards rushing for the senior, his first touchdown of the season. So props to him in that. Friends was up 17-14 at the half, and then a 49-3 second half. So Jake says 353 yards to break the regular season record. How about that? Not bad. Let's throw this one up there really quickly. Bethel could still upset the Kessinger division. You know what? They could. I at this point, I don't see Evangel not going. I think where it would upset the division is, and we'll talk about this on Tuesday, the possibility of the KCAC as a whole being a 3-bid league. Now, I know it's already been broken up into divisions, so I think the Kessinger division could be a 2-bid league. But Evangel does need to take care of business for that to happen. I think that would go a long way for that. Anyway, and don't put anything past Bethel. It's a team that's 6-4, and that to this point still amazes me how they are 6-4 at this point in time. I'm very surprised by that. Friends 66, McPherson 17. They get the win in a minor league ballpark, and just a big day for the Falcons overall. Yeah, I think Friends could definitely come away with more than 353 rushing yards this coming week. Let's move on. St. Ambrose 41, Judson 21. It was senior day there in Davenport. And Joey Sprinkle, I like that name. Really, I know I do. 15 for 23 passing, and he had 5 passing touchdowns, 2 picks. So that took him out a little bit of our look at the top 5 overall. He was injured in week 4, and I wondered about that. Looked back, checked this out. Sprinkle's a freshman. This is a St. Ambrose team. I'm right now with the 1 win. They're going to win more than 1 game in 2024. I'm just going to go ahead and put that out there. The Bees, and I've teased a little bit about that, the fact that the Bees, the Fighting Bees, haven't had much fight this year. I think St. Ambrose comes away with more than 1 win in 2024. Just going to go ahead and pick that right now. They won't have Yemi Ward, though. 11 catches for 199 yards. Wow. 3 receiving touchdowns. Wow. He's the all-time leader in receiving touchdowns now for St. Ambrose, 37 of those for his career. 14 this season. That's second only to J.D. Dixon, by the way, of Bethel, who we'll talk about here in just a moment. Has 14. That's tied for second in the NAIA. And the 14 overall, or excuse me, the 14 for the season is second all-time for St. Ambrose. So let's talk about Bethel really quickly. How about this? Joaquin Collazo III, 24 for 34 passing, 254 passing yards, threw 3 passing touchdowns and a pick in a 36-14 victory over Campbellsville. Collazo and Jagger Gillis, The headliners in this one, they lived up to it. Gillis, 28 for 41 passing, 320 through the air, one passing touchdown. However, where Collazo had 3 touchdowns thrown and 1 pick, Gillis, it was the other way around. 1 touchdown thrown and 3 picks. He did have 8 carries for 35 yards and a rushing touchdown. But you can't say enough about this Bethel defense. And it's a defense that's stronger this year than it was last year. J.D. Dixon, we mentioned him, 1 receiving touchdown. He has 15 on the year. That leads the NAIA, 9 catches for 163 yards. But talk about this Bethel defense for a moment. Forced 7 fumbles and recovered 5 of them, and had 3 interceptions. 8 turnovers on the day. It's a defense that's giving up only 13.1 points per game. Gave up 14 on Saturday. I know. Woo. That's 4th in the NAI, and that goes along with 47.7 points per game that the offense is scoring. Listen, you have that kind of offensive production, that kind of defensive production. This is a team that you would not want to bet against in the playoffs coming up. St. Mary. We said the Spires would not shoot themselves in the foot. By the way, the Spires shot themselves in both feet last week. And this would give Jartavius Martin an opportunity to light things up this week. It's exactly what happened. 40-31, the Spires over the Blue Jays of Tabor. Eric Covington, 22 for 31 passing, 316 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, 8 carries for 61 yards, had a rushing touchdown as well. But Jartavius Martin, 28 more carries, 168 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. Goes along with 331 rushing yards last week. A big, big day for him. William Green, by the way, for Tabor, 19 completions of 42 passes, 308 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns. We are almost to the top 5, so let's round out the beyond the 5 right here. Dakota State 19, Mayville State 14, and Dakota State gets its first win of the season. Trey Heddick, 21 for 37 passing, 299 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, no picks, 9 carries for 73 yards. The freshman came in the 5th game of the season. By far, it's his best game. Dakota State could be turning the corner right now. It's late in the season to say that. Dickinson State, 9th consecutive conference championship with a 48-17 victory over Valley City State. Dickinson State, 8-1 right now overall. The one loss, a 1-point loss to a Frontier Conference team, could be a conference rival sometime soon. 7-0 on the year in North Star play. Will Madler, 15 for 21 passing, 239 yards, 3 passing touchdowns. Braden Zuroff, 18 carries for 94 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. And Noah Sickler with 3 catches, 2 of them 4 touchdowns. Southern Oregon, 41. Eastern Oregon, 24. Blake Asiato, every time. Blake Asiuto, that's better. You know what? The first time, always. I don't know. Blake, I just call you Blake. Can I call you Blake? Are we that close? I don't know if we're that close or not. I want to be respectful. Asiuto, 19 for 31 passing, 238 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns, didn't throw an interception. Panhandle State, 46. Southwestern Assemblies of God, 29. The Aggies, led by Brandon Stevens again. He had 2 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns. And Kaiser continues to win over NAI opponents, 18-1 through the last 2 seasons. The only loss coming to Northwestern in the national championship last year. Bryce Beasley, 14 of 20 passing, 144 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 3 carries for 23 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. And Andrew Burnett, 13 carries for 97 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns for him as well. 59-17 the score. That means somebody else had a couple of scores. Lewis Averhart III, 4 catches, 67 yards. He had 2 receiving touchdowns. And now we get to the top 5. So if you're thinking, hey, listen, my team had a good game, and he didn't mention my team yet. Well, we're getting there. So let's go ahead and get there right now. Can we do this? Did I get the right? Yes, we did. All right. You ready? There we go. Our top 5 performances, and here we go. In case there are some rules, by the way, that we have on this particular show on Midwest Sportsnet. One of those rules is that if you're a defensive player, it's unlikely that you're going to get too much too much representation on the top 5. We'll still talk about you some, but you don't make the top 5 very often. And I get that because we're trying to get some, it's about the numbers. That's why we do Beyond the 5, because sometimes you go beyond the numbers. But the rule is if you're on the defense and you get at least 2 touchdowns, non-offensive touchdowns, you're going to be on the board. Lindsey Wilson's Chevis Elliott did just that. Lindsey Wilson, 45, Cumberland, 2. That is right. The defense recorded 16 tackles for loss. That includes 4 sacks. For Lindsey Wilson, Ethan Cash, 19 for 28 passing, 263 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, no picks. Excuse me, that's a good day for him. Jabias Dawson, 12 carries, 117 yards, and a rushing touchdown. Quante Hicks, 3 catches, 70 yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. But Chevis Elliott had 2 tackles. He also had a fumble recovery, which he picked up, was able to scoop and score 15 yards in for the touchdown. And he had a diving interception going into the end zone, a pick 6 for 1 yard. He has a fumble recovery for a touchdown, an interception for a touchdown. Lindsey Wilson, amazing performance. Chevis Wilson on our board, top 5 performances. The defense, by the way, for Lindsey Wilson now has 6 defensive touchdowns. That's tops in the NAIA. That's even more than Bethel. 2 teams, by the way, in the Mid-South that are putting up some pretty good defensive play. Lindsey Wilson had 2 different players combined. By the way, you look at this, 45. How did that happen? Lindsey Wilson had 2 different players. This shouldn't be in the top 5, but we're going to give it to you anyway. 2 different players combined to miss 4 point-after attempts. So you'd think that the Blue Raiders should have had 49 points, and they should have. There were 4 extra points left on the field. But it wasn't all on the foot of one player in particular. Let's move on. Grandview took care of business for all the people out there who are looking to try to get that extra at-large. And the big thing here for Grandview is that the Vikings defeated the Statesmen. If the Statesmen had been able to pull off a win against Grandview and holding on for the next week, that would have taken up an at-large bid because Grandview is going to make the playoffs. It's just that's the way it's going to happen. Grandview took care of business. How about Jackson Waring? 18 for 27 passing, 67%, 245 yards passing, 4 passing touchdowns, no interceptions, 7 carries for 30 yards, 1 rushing touchdown. He was responsible for 5 TDs on the day. Jackson Waring in our top 5 performances. And Grandview now at 10-9 consecutive wins in this regular season. They're undefeated. Seth Adrian, 13 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, by the way, in this Viking defense. 1.5 sacks. Jalen Perkins, 2 interceptions himself. But they weren't pick sixes. That's okay. 2 breakups, too. Perkins, a lockdown in that secondary for Grandview. 35-6 over William Penn. Montana Western over Carroll. We picked this, but we didn't pick this by 21 points. The Bulldogs over the Saints, 38-17. Big win. Carroll was up 17-14 at the half and didn't score again. Montana Western, 24 points in the second half, and it's a 38-17 victory. Excuse me. We're going to make it through this without one more cough drop, so bear with me on this. Michael Palandri gets our top 5 performance here. 21 for 33 passing, 388 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks, 12 carries for 18 yards rushing, 1 more rushing touchdown. He had 406 yards of total offense on the day, and he did have some help from some of those receivers. How about Eli Norse, who's leading the NAIA in receiving yards? 7 catches, 123 receiving yards on the day. Dylan Shipley, 5 catches, 138 receiving yards, and a touchdown. And John Kirkley, the big day for the Bulldogs, 8 catches, 122 yards receiving. He had 3 receiving touchdowns. Don't forget about Keegan Muffick, 8 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 2 interceptions. The defense able to pick off Jack Perka 4 times on the day, and that was a big point of emphasis there. Well, the Saints 4 times on the day. Michael Palandri, we've talked about him all through the season. Another big day, and we have him in our top 5 performances. Texas College, 38. Wayland Baptist, 36. The Steers get the win. And they do it on the strength of Terrell Hookfin, or Terrell Hookfin. We didn't get word back on that. Sorry. And Mr. Hookfin, I do my best to try to find these pronunciations, and sometimes we don't get word back. So sorry. 19 for 32 passing, 336 passing yards, 5 passing touchdowns, no interceptions. He also had 13 carries for 141 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown. He was responsible for 6 touchdowns on the day and 477 yards of total offense. Big, big day for Hookfin. By the way, the Steers scored 6 touchdowns, went for 2 on all 6. The kicking game completely abandoned, converted only 1. And that's why it's not a 48-36 win, a 38-36 win, first win of the season. Props to the Steers for the victory. One more here, and so we finally come to this. Game of the Year Part 2, Northwestern over Morningside. That was Game of the Year Part 1. 2 undefeated teams that late in the season. We go to Game of the Year Part 2 the very next week. 2 undefeated teams late in the season, and it really came down to the wire, and it was really 2 halves. Once again, Marion, the defense, able to collect 3 turnovers on Indiana Wesleyan's first 3 possessions. Fumble, interception, and Marion goes up 17-0. But it wasn't going to stop right there. Indiana Wesleyan comes back, puts some points on the board. Marion, with a Hail Mary at the end of the first half, able to extend its lead, going up and putting 31 points on the board at the half. It looked like the Knights were rolling, but the defense, which had been so good for Marion in the first half, it was the defense for Indiana Wesleyan in the second half, stopping and stopping and stopping. Let's talk about some offensive production here. Xander Stokes for Indiana Wesleyan, 23 for 34, passing 256 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was picked off once. 9 carries for 98 yards. He had a rushing touchdown as well. Zach Bundalo continuing to roll. 19 for 31, 250 yards passing, 3 passing touchdowns. Didn't have an interception. 8 carries for 42 yards. The quarterback's responsible for 3 touchdowns apiece. For Indiana Wesleyan, as Tay Williams was in and then out, Isaiah Gibbs steps in, 9 carries, 101 yards rushing, and the final 2 rushing touchdowns for Indiana Wesleyan in the second half. For Marion, Keegan LaBelle, 10 carries, only 34 yards, but did have a big rushing touchdown. And then Indiana Wesleyan gets a punt block in the second half, and it really turned things around. And this is a defense that stood up in the second half, was able to hold Marion to just field goal attempts. 1 went through, 1 didn't go through. The big drive at the end, we'll get to that in just a moment. Neil Campbell, he was mentioned as on the radio broadcast, the Indiana Wesleyan radio broadcast, that he was the one that had the punt block. It's listed in the official box score as Matthew Shager. Doesn't matter. Indiana Wesleyan gets a punt block, gets the ball in good position, and starts to move the ball down the field. It's 31-28, then it's 34-28, then it's 35-34. Indiana Wesleyan takes the lead, then goes up 42-34, and Marion, to its credit, as it's just done all year, continues to stay with it. A drive in the fourth quarter, coming back, getting the score. You just knew that the Knights were going to score here and that it was going to come down to a 2-point conversion. And that is why we're going to go with the Wildcat defense as being the players with the top 5 performance. Here we go. It's the 3rd time this year that Indiana Wesleyan has had to stop a 2-point conversion to either tie the game or protect the lead on a 1-point game that would have lost. 3rd time it comes down to a 2-point conversion, and for the 3rd time, the Indiana Wesleyan defense bows up, holds off that 2-point conversion. The Knights with a huge drive, 42-40 the score, 2-point conversion, not successful. Indiana Wesleyan continues the undefeated season, breaks the tie in the series, by the way, as these two teams had won 2 games apiece in the all-time series. The Wildcats win here in the regular season, and I say that because these are two teams that could meet in the playoffs as well. The regular season victory goes to Indiana Wesleyan. Props to the Wildcat defense, our top 5 performers for week number 10. So there we go. We're going to talk about Marion because Marion that the season's not over even next week. This is a night team that's going to be in the playoffs that will be an at-large at this point in time, especially if Indiana Wesleyan gets the victory next week. And that's no given. You're going to be taking on a very tough Concordia team. Indiana Wesleyan will go to the playoffs. Marion will go to the playoffs. You'll see both these teams playing later on in November. It just depends on when they're going to be playing. We'll talk more about that on Tuesday. Again, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. And if you're watching us out in Oregon, yeah, where is that where you are, Jake? You're watching, not Jake. If you're watching us out in Oregon, Han Solo, I guess 6 o'clock Standard Time, you can watch the replay just in case you're not able to be on live. But we would love for you to be on live. And I want to give a shout out to everyone really quickly. Those are our top 5. I'm going to leave the graphic on the board as we start to wrap things up here past the 45-minute mark. Let me say thank you to everyone for watching. You watch from Iowa, you watch from Kansas, you watch from Oregon, you watch from Indianapolis. You watch from a lot of different places, and I'm really, really grateful. You watch from Missouri as well. If you haven't told us from where you're watching, please do so. And feel free to support the channel if you'd like. We're able to do that now with the super chats and super stickers and all those. So we'd appreciate that opportunity. But I'm enjoying visiting, and it's been a fun season. So we have our last top 5 performance of the regular season 1 week from tonight. Tuesday night, we'll talk about the playoff possibilities. We have it down to 27 teams with legitimate playoff aspirations, and we'll tell you why on Tuesday. Thursday, we will preview the week ahead, and we'll talk about the last week of the regular season. 45 games on the docket for next Saturday, November 11th. It's fitting on Veterans Day, which we'll talk about that because here on Midwest Sportsnet, we are staunch supporters of our veterans. We are very much believers in the military and very grateful for what our people and the ones who serve us do for us. So we're thankful. We'll talk about Veterans Day, but it's appropriate, isn't it, that week 11 would take place on 11/11. So we'll throw out a few numbers and more. We'll have a good time talking about that on Thursday. And then Sunday night, once again, it's going to be a big, long day for me. I'll be calling Division II Conference Championship in women's soccer earlier that day, a couple hours up the road from where we are in our studio. I'll be back in time to get this done on Sunday night. So please just continue to be a part of it. And it means a lot to me. I'm very, very thankful. I have enjoyed getting to know some of you all in the chat, in the comments. So please keep that up as well. And we'll just grow this channel and grow our time. God bless you all. Thank you so much for watching. Again, you're very much appreciated. So the next time, if we don't have a video up between now and then, the next time for sure we get to visit live will be in about not quite 47 hours. Or no, excuse me, a little more than 47 hours. How about that? God bless you all. Said I was going to make it through without that second cough drop. I'm going to do it. I'll stop now. God bless you all. Have a great night. We'll talk to you on Tuesday.